Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, and welcome to a day when news junkies are practically beside themselves. I've got one sitting next to me here, Chris Potter, editor of Pittsburgh City Paper, with his smartphone in his hand, tuned to Supreme Court blog.
Right, because like everyone else out there, I am desperately waiting to hear the court's ruling in the case Sekar versus United States, which concerns the critical constitutional question of whether a government attorney's opinion counts as property under...
What the hell are you talking about?
Under the Hobbs Act.
Well,
here we go. It's the very first opinion out is DOMA. It's not yet clear what it is. That's a little surprising, actually. So,
okay.
There we go.
So there's already a crowd here on Liberty Avenue between 9th and 10th Street. The police have blocked off the roads because this is a huge thing for America, but more specifically for the gay community. I mean, this is unbelievable, really.
And there are, of course, two decisions today related to this question. One is this DOMA decision. It's 5-4. It's now a 5-4 decision
5-4.
with Kennedy writing for the majority, which I think we knew would happen, and it's most likely that DOMA
will be declared unconstitutional.
Roberts dissents, Scalia dissents, we're being told. So this is already good stuff coming to us from SCOTUSblog.com.
You know it's it.
Yes, so this was the DOMA case, and because there are two cases, we should be clear on what this one about. This was about the legality, the constitutionality of the federal law, the Federal Defense of Marriage Act, passed by the Congress back in the 1990s and
signed by Bill Clinton,
which basically prohibited married couples, same-sex married couples, from getting the same kinds of tax benefits and other federal benefits that the rest of us straight married folks take for granted.
Which is just, I mean, clearly unconstitutional on its face.
It's a little crazy, and this was the big question. Here it comes from SCOTUS blog. DOMA is unconstitutional as a deprivation of the equal liberty of persons that is protected by the Fifth Amendment. So this is a big ruling, and interestingly, I think some people expected Kennedy to get into a whole question about whether it was an infringement on states' rights, which is something that he brought up because there are obviously several states that do recognize same-sex marriage or an equivalent status. I don't know quite whether DOMA singles out. Here's a quote from the ruling. DOMA singles out a class of persons deemed by a state entitled of a recognition and protection to enhance their own liberty.
Duh.
So in other words, once this doesn't give marriage rights to those of us in Pennsylvania. We should be clear about that. What it does say is that if you are married in a state that does recognize those things, you are entitled to federal benefits.
Now, as everybody probably knows, because they're also smart who listen to the show, we're waiting for a second opinion out of a Prop 8 case out of California, which the court watchers think is not going to
It's quite likely that the Chief Justice Roberts will write an opinion in this case, and he's actually very likely to punt essentially on the question of standing, because there's some serious questions. There was actually questions on this case too about because both of these cases had situations where the people who ordinarily defend the Constitution constitutionality of a law, the Justice Department and the White House at the federal level, and then the state attorney general at the state level. Both of them just kind of said, the hell with it. We're not interested in doing it. So you had different people picking up the mantle, kind of. You had the House Republicans at the federal level in the DOMA case, and then you had some people who had supported Proposition 8, which was California's anti-gay marriage ballot. Let's see. Yep, it does rely on federalism principles, as I kind of suggested before. So, this again coming from SCOTUS blog. They've already linked to the opinion, so I'm just going to read that in the next 2 minutes and let you know.
All right. Now, I have to say that you suggested there might be a punt coming up on the Prop 8 case, when it also seems to many that the Supreme Court also punted on affirmative action earlier in the week. And I read a very interesting piece by a law professor, I think from UC Irvine, who suggests that, look, John Roberts is a young man, and he wasn't about to, in 1 week, gut the Voting Rights Act.
That's right.
Gut affirmative action.
Right.
Wasn't going to do it. That Roberts is looking at the long term, and he figures, all right, we're just going to set the stage. So there was a little bit of a move toward where he wants to end up. A little bit. They absolutely feel that time is on their side.
Right. Yeah, and I did not. I read very closely, actually, the decision that came down yesterday. Good God, now I've blanked on what it is.
The Voting Rights Act.
The Voting Rights Act. Thank you. Yeah, and that was written by Roberts, and I have to say I came to have a sort of renewed appreciation for what a slick SOB that guy actually is.
Right.
Because again, it was this sort of, the Voting Rights Act is largely responsible for the incredible progress we've seen in these states.
So let's
and that's
destroy
why we
it.
have to put it up on a shelf and never use it again, most likely.
Destroy it. Well, that brings me to one of my favorite quotes, and this is from the dissent to yesterday's ruling on Voting Rights Act by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who wrote this, and this is it exactly. Throwing away pre-clearance, which is what they threw away, the need for certain states and jurisdictions to get approval from the feds before they change their voting and election laws. Throwing away pre-clearance when it has worked and is continuing to work is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet.
Yeah, that's it. That's perfectly stated. She was lit up, apparently.
She's been, right. And she's been reading a lot of her dissents from the bench. And Dana Milbank pointed out the other day something that nobody else has, and he was surprised nobody else has, that often while she's reading her dissent, Alito's
rolling his eyes and shaking his head
and being just unbelievably disrespectful.
Yeah, apparently he has a bit of a history of that. He's done that with some of the other female justices as well.
Only with females.
Yeah, I mean that was what I read. I don't know. Of course, he's noted for sort of his body language during the State of the Union address.
He was saying that's a lie.
It wasn't
not body
true
language. You could read it just fat
right.
out. He says that's a lie to Obama, which is just not quite as bad as shouting out, "Liar, you lie," which is what the congressman did.
Right. I'm as I scan here the DOMA ruling. This is again from the majority opinion written by Justice Kennedy. The history of DOMA's enactment in its own text to demonstrate that interference with the equal dignity of same-sex marriage, a dignity conferred by the states in the exercise of their sovereign power, was more than an incidental effect of the federal statute. It was its essence. So, in other words, it's not just the dignity of these couples that are offended here that he's concerned about. It's the dignity of states to pass their own, to make their own rules about how marriage is concerned. And this should, for those of us who followed the oral arguments, this is not a surprise that Kennedy was concerned with this, because it was a question that he asked. These are questions that he asked repeatedly and pointedly during the deliberations over this. Under DOMA, same-sex married couples have their lives burdened by reason of government decree and visible in public ways. By its great reach, DOMA touches many aspects of married and family life, from the mundane to the profound. It protects same-sex married couples from obtaining government health care benefits they would otherwise receive. It deprives them of the bankruptcy code special protections for domestic support obligations. It forces them to follow a complicated procedure to file their state and federal taxes jointly, and on and on. For certain married couples, DOMA's unequal effects are even more serious. The penal code makes it a crime. There are things about how kidnapping and things could be used against couples who are...
Here's the question I had for my sister the other day when we were talking about this eventuality. Okay, you're a married gay couple in Massachusetts, or let's say you're like Lauren Daley, who's one of your reporters, who is now she is married to her wife, and they went to New York.
Yeah, they did.
To be married because this state does not allow them to. Now that DOMA is passed, even though the state of Pennsylvania doesn't recognize her marriage, the federal government does that mean that for instance, spousal benefits from Social Security would go to. So all of that kind of stuff, even if she's not living in one of the states.
My understanding, I mean, generally, here's what we could say about that. Generally, the marriage laws in one state
go to the next.
Apply to the other. I don't have to remarry. I would not have to remarry Melanie if we moved to Ohio, right?
Right, but this has not been the case.
So, well, we'll see. I mean, that's the question, because a lot of states, as we've seen, thanks to the genius of our Republican friends in the legislatures, have sometimes passed their own state versions of DOMA that say we don't have to recognize these things. Now, this ruling is only about the federal law. I don't know whether there are any real implications. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I don't know what the implications would be for a couple in a state that did not recognize that. What you could probably do is say, if a state conferred any of its own benefits, and I don't know what those would be, I would assume that Pennsylvania would be able to continue to screw people out of what other benefits Pennsylvania conferred.
Yes.
But the state can't say, well, you don't get Social Security benefits.
No,
because that's not
federal.
The state's call. That's
right.
The federal call. So a state may still be able to have its own dumb rules. And I don't know I'd have to really think about what state benefits.
But this brings me to another question, which is off subject, but okay. So in regard to Obamacare, the state of Pennsylvania refused to set up its own insurance exchange, which means that they're letting the federal government run Pennsylvania's exchange.
Yeah.
However, the state legislature just passed this bill that says that you can't...
Oh, this is interesting. I don't know.
Well, think about that you can't buy an insurance program
that
covers abortion.
Right.
How dare they have any... How do they have any standing when it's the feds doing it?
This is an excellent question. I have a feeling a lot of these debates are going to play themselves out. We'll probably be seeing a case like that a few years down the road. Now, that case can't arise yet because the insurance exchanges have not been set up. Nobody's been disadvantaged.
And it could also be argued, listen to this, it could also be argued that this law prevents a private citizen from buying a private policy.
Yes. That would be an argument. Absolutely.
That covers a legal procedure.
Yeah.
How the hell?
Yeah.
I am so sick of you Republicans.
Yeah.
If there's
it's
any
because
of
they
you
believe
out
in the
there,
free
I am
market.
Sick of you. That is a stick in the eye of the free market you supposedly love. It is a stick in the eye to the very American idea of having the right to do what you want, to buy the insurance coverage you want.
I got to say, this is
sick of it.
This is a really good opinion, just from what I'm gleaning here. DOMA also brings financial harms to the children of same-sex couples. Again, this is Kennedy. Those of us who remember the oral arguments, remember, he was very concerned. What about the kids? I mean, there's literally a question. It was kind of, what's somebody think of the children?
And there's a lot of kids.
It raises the cost of health care for families by taxing health benefits provided by employers to their workers' same-sex spouses. This is something a lot of people don't think about. But generally speaking, when you have a health policy that covers a spouse, that's non-taxable, because that's how it's set up. But a same-sex partner doesn't get that benefit. That benefit becomes compensation that gets taxed the same way. The value of that insurance that covers your same-sex partner gets taxed the same way your salary does. It's another form of compensation. So this is a way where the rules were written to protect opposite-sex couples, but not to benefit but essentially ended up harming these same-sex couples. DOMA divests married same-sex couples of the duties and responsibilities that are an essential part of married life, and that they in most cases would be honored to accept were DOMA not in force. Because it is expected that spouses will support each other as they pursue educational opportunities. Federal law, here's another one that's very true in my house. Federal law takes into consideration a spouse's income in calculating a student's federal financial aid eligibility, but not in a same-sex couple because they have to report their income separately. So it just sounds like a really sweeping debate here, a really sweeping argument. Here we go. Let's see. I'm now jumping back to SCOTUS blog. Scalia is reading from his dissent. Here we go.
Despicable.
Justice Scalia is reading from his dissent right now. The court's opinion, both in explaining its jurisdiction and its decision, quote, both spring from the same diseased root, an exalted notion of the role of the court in American democratic society.
What?
So,
this is the same court?
This is the same guy who just yesterday, I mean, this is, you gotta love this argument about.
What is with this? What hypocrisy? This is the same court that yesterday scuttled the Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
Congresses from 1965 on had almost unanimously passed and then re-upped, and other courts, Supreme Courts, have upheld.
Yes.
And now he dares to say that this is an example. What about yesterday, you friggin' idiot?
It's great. An activist court is the court that comes to the conclusion you didn't want it to come to. Right? I mean, that's the definition of it. I'm scanning through here. It does seem as though.
Oh my God.
It does seem as though, based on some of the early tea leaves. Now, remember, again, there were two cases. This is the first one, DOMA. This DOMA case, United States versus Windsor.
Prop 8 isn't up?
Prop 8 is not up yet. And because Scalia is reading from the bench, it's going to take a while to get to that. But there are some early tea leaves here that say that in the Prop 8 case, it's very likely that the case will be dismissed for lack of standing.
Exactly.
And so the result of that will likely be that the lower court decision overturning Proposition 8 and allowing gay marriage in the state of California, that will be upheld, that California's same-sex couples will be able to get married there.
Yes.
That is what it sounds like. Without the sanction of the highest court, they'll just sort of drop the thing and say you didn't have standing.
Now, the understanding, they're dropping back to you don't have standing because the state of California did not bring...
Did
not defend.
Neither the governor nor the attorney general of the state.
And the court has found in the past that in order to go before the court... Well, why did they accept the case then? In order to go before the court, you needed to be personally, you couldn't just not like a law. I don't like this law, so I'm...
And that was a strange situation because the people who brought it... Well, I'm not an expert on judicial procedure at the highest court level, but what I believe is that it takes 4 justices. If 4 justices say, yes, we'll hear this decision, or we'll hear this case, then it comes before the case. That's not to say the case will be decided the way the 4 justices want, but essentially... Only 4 justices have to say it's worth hearing, even if a majority later say it to decide to dismiss it on standing.
Pete Williams, who's generally thought to be a pretty smart court watcher, says this was a very broad ruling that can be used by proponents of same-sex marriage to attack laws in other states.
Yeah, interesting. Although we should say Roberts' dissent, as I'm scanning through here, says the court does not have before it, and this ruling does not decide, the distinct question of whether states may continue to utilize the traditional definition of marriage. So again, to kind of get back to the point we were making before, individual states may still have their own rules about marriage, and this does not compel them to allow gay marriage. What it does say is where gay marriage is allowed, in states where gay marriage is allowed, and when a marriage between a same-sex couple has been ratified by the state, the federal government does not have the ability to deny them the benefits that it provides to all other married couples. And what it seems like is that decision, again, it's a long decision. I haven't read it all, so it's hard to put it in context. But what it seems like is Justice Kennedy's concerns about the effect upon children, the effect upon the rights of states to set their own rules for marriage have really been what's carried the day here, supported by the 4 liberal members of the the court.
You know, your Charlie Deitch and Lauren are both jumping all over. Apparently, I think the people down there had their TV screen. You know, they have a huge screen down there. Turned to CNN,
and they got it wrong.
I went to say they didn't get it wrong. They just didn't get it. They were like 10 minutes, 15 minutes later. Anybody I was looking at there right here, and it was like expecting a ruling in a while, and it could be that. And Charlie texted something like, CNN is a cluster for breaking news 10 minutes later than it actually happens. Everybody else has this news out.
We beat CNN today. We beat CNN.
Which isn't saying much. But it could be they're so freaked about getting it wrong all the time.
Yeah, they could be. Yes. Yeah.
My understanding is that Rich Fitzgerald and Bill Peduto are down there with the crowds.
Yeah, probably.
Down there.
Yeah.
Oh, here, somebody is texting. Carl Rowe says DOMA might be safe. He's on the phone now with the GOP Republican chair in Harrison County.
It really is. I mean, it really is remarkable. I'm actually sort of looking forward to reading Scalia's dissent the same way, like when the Steelers won the Super Bowl, you go to the newspaper website of the city that they beat and read their sports columns the next day. You know what I mean? Just that pure schadenfreude or whatever. And I am very interested to see just how he kind of threads that needle, where sometimes it's okay for the court to insert its judgment over the express wishes of the Senate and previous, multiple court precedents yesterday, but today it's completely unacceptable for them to do so.
That's right. So you got all these federal agencies that are going to have to rework all of their, all their benefits packages. This is going to create a lot of work for folks. Now, recall that the two attorneys who argued the California case, Prop 8, which we're still waiting to hear, but we think we know what it'll be, were the two adversaries who argued the Gore v. Bush case.
Were the two attorneys who joined together.
Ted Olson, who had argued for the Bush side, and David Boies for the Gore side. And it's remarkable that these two men, and make no mistake, Olson is a rock-ribbed conservative Republican, both of them, those two brains together are the ones that took the Prop 8 case, to the Supreme Court. Surely then they were aware that the court had this out with standing.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you got to remember, the funny thing about that is this is how much people should go back 4 years ago when these two attorneys first brought this case. There was actually concern amongst the LGBT.
Yes, right.
Like, why are you doing this? It's not the time. It's not the right time.
Right.
We don't have the people behind us. That was just 4 years ago.
It's amazing.
Nobody feels that way now.
It's
If
amazing.
anything, people are going to be a little disappointed today, I think, if the case is tossed out for standing, because they're going to feel like, we could have had the whole thing in one fell swoop. Just think how much that's changed in less than half a decade. We've gone from, oh God, don't bring it up.
It is amazing the speed with which the gay community.
Here's the preface, or this is Scalia.
To his dissent.
This case, in Scalia's dissent, this case is about power in several respects. It is about the power of our people to govern themselves. It's about the power of people to govern other people and whether they have the right to do it, you big jerk.
God.
And the power of this court to pronounce the law. Today's opinion aggrandizes the latter with the predictable consequences of diminishing the former. We have no power to decide this case. And even if we did, we have no power under the Constitution to invalidate this democratically adopted legislation, even though that's exactly what we did yesterday. That must be La Dulce Vita.
The head explodes.
It's just, you get up on it. If it's a Wednesday, I must be for judicial restraint.
Jeez. Okay, we've got to. Can we sneak a break in here?
Yeah, I think we should.
Let's do it.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pick up the all-new Pittsburgh City Paper today. Still the #1 source for weekend fun in the Burgh. Go online now at www.pghcitypaper.com to vote in the 2013 Best of Pittsburgh Readers Poll and type in the promo code CPTSTIX for your chance to win Taylor Swift tickets. Vote now before it's too late. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com.
Welcome to Move Time Radio, presented by the Arthritis Foundation, and we're smack dab in the middle of our dance-a-thon to fight arthritis pain. Me, I've been grooving for 10 hours straight, baby, but I'm a boogie machine. See, movement is just one of the ways to help fight osteoarthritis pain. Another is weight loss. You get rid of just 1 pound. That's 4 pounds of pressure off each knee. For more information on managing pain, visit fightarthritispain.org. Then meet me on the dance floor. This message brought to you by the Arthritis Foundation and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Apparently, Bruce Kraus, who is the openly gay member of the Pittsburgh City Council, who's down at this rally, said to the crowd, I asked Rich Fitzgerald to marry me. He said no. So I'm
Laws
asking
against bigamy.
Now I'm asking Bill. I'm asking Bill Peduto.
Yeah, Bill doesn't really have a convenient excuse there, I'm afraid. Right. So it's going to be just for those just tuning in now, the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 majority, led by Justice Anthony Kennedy, has struck down DOMA. For those of you who, like me, were waiting for the outcome of Sekar versus United States.
Oh, shut up. Okay, and here's something
that
good.
decision has also been reversed.
This is an alert to all Christian fundamentalists.
Yep.
Your 3-day window for God's punishment begins now.
Yes. Here comes Perry, written by the Chief Justice. The petitioners did not have standing to appeal the district court order. Therefore, the lower court decision is upheld. The lineup in that case was 5-4. With Kennedy dissenting, Thomas, Alito, and Sotomayor. So the decision of the Ninth Circuit is vacated and remanded. So blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so that means all those people that married in California in that window before Prop 8 are married again.
I think they were always.
I don't think so.
No, I think because that was sort of the weird thing there. I think they were still. I can't remember. So just again, so there's no confusion out there. This does not give people in Pennsylvania, say, the right to go down to the courthouse today and get married.
Here's what Fitzgerald said to him when he proposed.
To Kraus.
Yeah. My wife and I are coming up on 30 years, which could be enough. Maybe I am on the market. I don't think Andy's going to like that.
Look, she's been, after 30 years, she knows what Rich is like, I suspect. All right, we may be getting a call here from our very own Lauren Daley in just a second.
Okay, that'd be cool.
She's been down there, not just covering this, she has been down there with her partner, so I assume that some of the delay here was so that they could jump up and down
and cry
together or whatnot. So
Lauren Daley, who is a reporter for the City Paper, has been told to call, by God. Get on it. She's too happy to talk to us. Oh, here's a retweet from somebody. Supreme Court overrules God.
Yes! No, I didn't realize that was possible.
Oh, man.
Was that somebody serious? I guess you can't tell.
I think it was.
Okay.
I can't tell. I can't. You can't tell tone on a tweet.
Yeah, that's so true.
But it's a good one.
Yeah.
No matter what they meant. Barack Obama has tweeted, today's DOMA ruling is a historic step forward. Love is love. That's amazing. He did that from Senegal.
Oh, really? He probably had it set to go.
Oh,
they probably had
I
like
think
two
so,
tweets set to go. I'm very disappointed. Click. Nope. Let's see. Here's from the opinion on the Prop 8 case. We have never before upheld the standing of a private party to defend the constitutionality of states. That's you. We got a phone call.
Lauren?
Is this Lauren Daley?
Hi.
Yes, sir.
Hey, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. We're very proud.
Yeah. What's the feeling? What's the atmosphere down there?
Well, right now it's very jovial, but it was kind of funny when it happened because the CNN didn't post it. So everyone was like on their phone like, oh, it's unconstitutional, but like no one was really celebrating because no one didn't know. And then someone was giving a speech, and then someone broke in, and they're like, it's unconstitutional, and then these people just lost their shit. I mean, like, the sound guy was sobbing, the women I was seeing before, they were just, like, clutching each other. But there was definitely a lag to see just kind of what was actually happening.
Well, who was the idiot who tuned to CNN?
You could tell they're being very cautious since the Affordable Care Act was.
So, Lauren, I mean, this is obviously just on a very personal level.
Yeah.
I mean, for you and your partner married legally under the laws of New York State. Does this mean I don't have to listen to you complain anymore about how little we pay you because now you're going to get all kinds of great Social Security benefits and everything?
Oh no! If anything, you'll just hear more until Pennsylvania gets its shit together.
Don't hold your breath there, Lauren.
No, you know what? It was a great moment. My wife was actually down here with me for part of it, and I turned to go do my city paper duties, take some photos, and be, your trusted correspondent. And I turn around, and she's holding like the giant rainbow flag with the crowd. But it was really, really cool. Though my favorite moment was when Bruce Kraus proposed to Rich Fitzgerald.
Yeah. And then got denied, I guess. So.
Well, Rich didn't rule it out. He said they're coming up on their 30th anniversary, and he wasn't taking anything off the table.
Yes, but I understand then, unsure of himself, Kraus suggested maybe he could marry Bill Peduto. Was there an answer there?
He did, and I didn't hear Bill reject him yet, so you never know.
You know what? I got to say that this just occurred to me. So Rich Fitzgerald is putting his 30-year marriage at hazard now. It's true. Gay marriage does threaten traditional
You should all go home and hug your spouses because we're going to mess it all up for you.
Wow.
So everybody, is it common knowledge down there on the street that it does appear that Prop 8 is just being dismissed for a lack of standing? Is that knowledge?
It was really confusing because Talia Rudiak was up there and then like someone screamed Prop 8 got struck down, but from what we were reading at the time, that's not exactly what happened. But there's definitely, even the fact it's getting dismissed is they're still celebrating it.
Right.
But there's a lot of talk about, while this is a great thing for the movement in general, how much work Pennsylvania still has to do with the anti-discrimination bill. So it's very jovial, but there's also some temperance.
Yeah, sure. So can you give us a sense of how many people are down there? What the kind of makeup of the crowd is?
About maybe 300 to 400. I'm not a numbers person, that's why I'm a journalist, but I'd say like there's a good section of a good couple hundred folks down here. There might also another highlight was a gentleman in a white suit glitter bobbing everyone, singing "It's a Great Day to Be Gay." He's walking towards me right now. I love
it. Watch the phone go out.
Oh yeah,
right. Lauren.
Hey, thanks.
But one thing I will say too, there was a lot of corporate representation down here too. With a lot of diversity groups, from PNC and UPMC and those groups, and they were a lot of employees. It's all of employees that I know at various corporations coming out. So it looks like the business community kind of stepped up here a little bit.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
But when will the state catch up? Hey, Lauren, tell me, do you think that gays, given their druthers, obviously, might just pack their bags and go to start living in these states, and that we'll see a brain drain from states like Pennsylvania?
I think on one hand, I could see why folks might do that. I mean, we were married in New York, but I think this kind of empowers people to think that it really could change in their home state. I met a couple here, two gentlemen from the North Hills who've been together for 12 years, and I asked them that question, and they said no. They said if this ruling's favorable, they believe that one day they'll get to marry in their home state, and they just said they didn't want to run. They wanted to stay right here until they could get the recognition. So I think some folks will do that, but I think the majority are willing to stay and fight it out.
Stand and fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you got to be feeling much better about your odds now than maybe a month ago or a
You
day.
do, and it sets everyone up, on stage. It just has the ACLU up there say, it's not an end, it's a beginning. And
right.
it certainly helps set some legal precedent.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Take care. Man.
Wow.
Yeah, that is great.
Wow.
Then, just as a supervisor, as a boss of an employee like that, I really am glad, because it does, Lauren's partner has a perfectly good job of her own with a good benefits package and all of that stuff. But it does suck when your people, and I work with these people and I care about them a lot, are disadvantaged in a really kind of material way like that.
Yeah.
It sucks. It just sucks. And so, I'm sure the people the good people at UPMC with whom I have had many a difference over the years. But on this issue, I think we're all sort of on the same way. You work alongside folks. And that to me is just the power of this entire movement of equality, is just that as every person comes forward, and
that's
you
what
realize
did it.
these are your coworkers, they're your friends.
That
they're your
was
relatives.
the key. That was the brilliance of coming out of the closet. That's what did it. That's why this one is different. Obviously, in the civil rights era, black people couldn't come out of the closet. They already were out of the closet. But this is what was different about this minority.
Right.
And all they had to do, I remember like 15, 20 years ago, I used to say all the time on my radio show, God, I just wish for one day everybody who's gay would turn purple or something.
Right.
And people would see, oh, wait a minute, it's my pastor, it's my doctor, it's my neighbor.
Right.
It's my kid.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what happened.
Although I always suspected my neighbor.
All right, so
something about that.
In the little bit of a lull, can we go on to just a few other things?
Sure.
Yes. Here's another great quote, one of my favorite quotes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's quote about the,
We're going back to
umbrella.
yesterday's the voting rights thing.
I'm not.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm going back to yesterday.
Yes.
And President Barack Obama saying this about climate change, which I know somebody like you would really appreciate because he spoke not only as a president, he spoke as a father.
Right.
And he said, we don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. Did you hear that?
I did not.
Is that not great?
Yeah.
And because, it's just, come on. And because the Flat Earth Society is meeting over there in the House of Representatives, I'm going to have to act.
Looks like we've got a call here.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Lynn. It's Beth calling from West Virginia.
Hey, Beth.
Hi, Beth.
One of the states that is still in the green on CNN's poll.
The green?
But,
what does that mean?
Just that they were just showing states that don't recognize gay marriage, which Pennsylvania was also green.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share my partner and I kind of anticipating DOMA being overturned 2 weeks ago. Went over to Maryland and we got our marriage license. And
congratulations!
Sunday we're going to go do it.
Yes.
Congratulations.
It is. I called her at work just to let her know what had happened. And I never thought it would have this emotional effect that it really has.
Yeah.
I'm so happy
really
for you.
It's wonderful. And it's, last year we had a commitment ceremony, not really knowing what was going to happen with any of these rulings.
Right.
And so we both had to go through and pay attorney's fees and everything else just to try to get what was close to a $25 marriage license.
Right. Right.
With all the legal benefits and everything else. And I just wanted to call and chat. I've known you for a long time, and you've been such a proponent of gay rights, and I just felt like sharing it with you, Lynn.
Oh, Beth, thank you so much, so much. Congratulations to you and your soon-to-be wives.
Yeah.
I say thank you so much.
Okay.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. It's interesting. She sounds subdued because she's just
it is astounding.
so emotional.
I mean, I have to say, when I probably get off the show here, it'll catch up with you. And the funny thing is, a lot of people predicted this result based on the arguments, and yet it still is.
If it hadn't happened, we'd be.
Yeah,
stuck.
and yet it still is amazing.
I know.
We're talking millennia of unjust attitudes and uncharitable hearts on this issue, and in my lifetime, and I'm only 42 years old. It's turned around.
Yeah.
It's turned around. It's amazing.
So let's talk about this odd thing of this progressive vein in America today, which seems in many ways ascendant, and yet an equal and countervailing force, which seems, I don't know if I'd say ascendant, but as politically powerful.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this country. Now, I'm worried about it holding together. I think we are as divided as we ever were, including before the Civil War.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the center holds.
Yeah.
It's clearly coming apart in our federal government. So I'm worried. I really am worried. I mean, all you have to do is look at that what happened in the Texas legislature last night. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, another amazing story of
this one woman. I'm sure you're aware of
Wendy
it.
Davis.
Wendy Davis stood for 13 hours. Could not even lean on the desk by law. Couldn't take a sip of water.
Couldn't even have a colleague adjust her back brace so she could stand all that time without there being a kerfluffle over.
And had to keep talking on point about the kind of draconian abortion bill that passed in Harrisburg without...
Worse.
Worse in Harrisburg?
The implications are worse in Texas because of the size of Texas, the distance.
Okay.
People have to go.
Pennsylvania is not a small state.
Yeah, I know, but...
And what Harrisburg managed to do, the only thing different in the thing that breezed through Harrisburg, where no one stood in opposition like there, is that they didn't drop the legal limit down to 20 weeks, which seems to me to be unconstitutional on its face, since Roe says 24, right, or 25, whatever. This war, literally war on women's bodies, is mind-boggling.
And remember, it comes to us courtesy of this, sort of Tea Party movement that said it wasn't about these issues, it was all about deficits, right? Remember when these guys first came along? That's what they were doing. Big government, we're against government, big government and deficits, and yet all they want to do is tell women what they can and can't do.
All they want to do is vaginal probes.
Yeah.
It is effed up big time. But I was thinking today when I got up, it all comes down to us, to we the people. We don't pay. How do we get through to people that if you don't vote in those unexciting elections where no one's running for president, you end up living in a state like this, which is governed by people who you don't agree with.
Right. And what you're also seeing, too, I think, is this sort of, the sort of balkanization of America, just in the most geographical kind of way. I mean, the previous caller, God bless her for living in West Virginia, but...
It's no different than Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, but even in Pennsylvania, I mean, you can find these sort of little islands, and there's been this sort of massive demographic shift where people are sort of moving geographically to kind of communities of political affinity or whatever, and you're just kind of seeing these, you can look at
it's becoming, okay, progressives live on both coasts and in urban
areas all scattered across the way.
The other crowd is all, is scattered throughout all over the place.
The exurbs in the rural areas.
But the exurbs are getting, suburbs are starting to head progressive because of the craziness of the right wing now.
And it depends a lot on what suburb you're in, too. I mean, you can't, a Dormont or a Mount Lebanon are a much different proposition than an Upper St. Clair or a Peters, to use the
I just
South
don't
Hills.
quite know what's going to...
Yeah, it's worrisome. And the other thing, too...
What's going to happen to us?
And, of course, the other thing, too, that we're also seeing is just sort of this, and these are rulings that haven't gotten this much attention, is the sort of unbridled continuation of the extension of corporate power. We saw a couple of rulings this week that is, make it all but improducing essentially to sue your employer for anything.
You can't sue your employer, and you can't sue a company for producing. Do you see something that harms you or someone else? Do you see how they have exempted so many industries from the very laws that they should be required to be regulated by.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, like, the oil and gas industry is exempted from the Clean Water Act.
Right.
What?
What possible damage could an offshore oil rig do water supply?
Or guns. The gun industry is not part of the Consumer Protection Act.
Yeah.
So that, they can recall a gun that shoots corks. Yeah. But they can't recall a gun that kills.
Yeah, what
the hell?
It's a very strange thing, and in some weird kind of way, sometimes it almost feels like the one is the flip side of the other. That in some ways, the Roberts Court has generally been good on free speech issues for the rest of us, but that seems to be more of an extension of its desire to allow corporations to buy up elections. That in some, that in some ways, these individual liberties, which are very important, obviously, we're celebrating a big win today, but once you sort of accept that argument that corporations are people, then individual liberty also sort of, it perverts that whole concept, because you go from sort of one person to one vote to $1 one vote.
That's right.
And once corporations are people, giving individual liberties to people isn't necessarily quite as untrammeled a good as it might have been otherwise. And I think that's sort of like what we're up against in terms of a lot of these court rulings, is this sort of like, companies can do whatever they want as well. So, you don't really have a right to complain about it, because we're also extending you your free speech rights too.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very nervous. I am a nervous
Don't
American.
be nervous today. Be happy today.
All right.
Just let it go.
All right.
Speaking of corporate,
we have to. I know.
Prerogatives.
I know we have to take a break. I was looking for this thing I read that was apropos of what you were talking about. All righty, we got what was amazing about Wendy, what's her name, Davis? She's up there for 13 hours yapping under all that stress and blah, blah, blah. And her hair looks good.
Great. That's Texas women, man.
That is Texas women. What the hell? What the hell? I'd be up there for 10 minutes and I'd look like I was, I can't even imagine, like I ran a marathon or something in high heels. All right, we got to get a break in. We'll be right back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Sign up for our weekly newsletter to hear about new deals first. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
We will not be an easy target. We will never roll over and let pain plan our day. We will protect our bodies and fight back by moving. We will do our morning laps, walk our dogs around the block, pass up the elevator, and proudly take the stairs. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? To learn more, visit us at fightarthritispain.org. This message brought to you by the Arthritis Foundation and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, once again, here's Lynn Cullen. By the way, I do have to let you all know before I forget at the end that I will not be here tomorrow or Friday. But I'll be back on Monday. I found what I was looking for, and this again is from this professor of law and political science at the University of California, Irvine, who says this. How he's the one who was suggesting that John Roberts is a patient young man.
Yeah.
And he's got a big agenda. And he's been very successful. And here's how we see a pattern, he says, here. He was talking about the voting rights opinion. We see a pattern that is characteristic of the Roberts Court, in which the conservative justices tee up major constitutional issues for dramatic reversal. First, the court wrecked campaign finance law in Citizens United. Yeah. On Tuesday this week, it took away a crown jewel of the civil rights movement. And as we saw in Monday's Fisher case, that's the affirmative action case, affirmative action is next in line. All they did on Monday was tee it up. And the court wants to wait another year or two to pull the trigger because they do not want to be so obviously the activist court that they are, as I said before, knocking off the Voting Rights Act and affirmative action in a few days.
Yeah. There was, I mean, this is, and to that point, I mean, the case yesterday, the Voting Rights Act case, was in many ways sort of foreshadowed about 4 years ago by an earlier case where the court said, we're not going to throw out Voting Rights Act just yet, but there are some really very serious constitutional issues here about how this is done.
They absolutely chose.
So they, you know, and apparently, and I guess to their credit, they meant what they said because, you know, clearly, and this is why it's hard not to see this rule. I mean, I've heard some people say, well, they didn't really throw this thing out. What they did is they said Congress can do it. Well, look, they gave Congress, they put Congress and the executive branch on notice 4 years ago that this thing was in trouble. And did Congress get anything done? No.
Is the Roberts Court operating in some kind of a strange vacuum where they're not aware that, you know, down the street in the Capitol that Congress is incapable of doing anything, let alone coming up with some new way to decide which states are the most racist?
Right.
By the way, if they did come, I was talking, I think on Monday, I have some sympathy for the argument that the way the law was working now was unfair.
Yes.
In that we all know, living in Pennsylvania, that this state is extraordinarily racist.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is look at the Voter ID Act, which if Pennsylvania had been one of the states that had to have pre-clearance,
we talked about this.
It wouldn't have passed.
Yeah.
We couldn't have, it wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
So I actually thought that there's no reason that any state should be,
or optionally, they should all be required.
That's what I mean.
To go through that.
All states, rather than picking. Somebody else suggested that if this law, Voting Rights Act, hadn't been around, that Barack Obama would not be president of the United States.
Yeah. Yes.
Just look at Florida.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I guess if there's progress here, it's that at least they have to acknowledge the success of the liberal project before they undermine it, right? I mean, John Roberts had to say,
"Oh, it worked.
It worked. It did a great job." He didn't just say like, "Oh, this was some misbegotten big government exercise."
It worked so well that we got this black guy in the White House. We got to stop this.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point is dead on. That, and in fact, I think there's some that judging by the standards originally enshrined in that law, the state that has the hardest time meeting the requirements set forth in the original Voting Rights Act now is Massachusetts, based on So there's definitely something to that. There's definitely
not right. And if I were in a southern state, I would be squawking and screaming to, "Hey, wait!
I still have to pay for the sins of a half century."
You know, there was a fascinating graphic in the Sunday New York Times, which did show a study that had been done by some, I don't know, University of Connecticut and University of California somewhere, and they looked at an Annenberg study of voters' attitudes toward ethnic and racial groups not of their own,
right?
And what do you? By doing that, they were able to sort of compile where the most bigoted people lived. Well, there was a map that colored in the states. Did you see it? Yeah. Where 75% of the people were over the U.S. average for bigotry.
Right.
75% over. The map, not surprisingly, was Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi, blah, 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 blah. West Virginia wasn't on it. Virginia wasn't on it. North Carolina wasn't on it. It was all the lowest tier of southern states and one outlier state.
The dear old Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Pennswoods, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
There
Explains
it
a
is.
lot.
Anyway, oh God, there's so much, and I had something
Well, the
else
one
in
thing-
my head that I wanted to say.
The one thing to remember as well, and I'm not trying to soften the blow here, but people do still have the right to sue to stop these things.
Yes.
So, for example, yesterday you heard Texas say, well, we're going to gear up that old voter ID thing now that we've been given the all clear. It's still possible for somebody to sue to stop that, just as happened here in Pennsylvania, which was not one of the states under the Section 5 review. So now, of course, I don't hold out much hope that there's a judge in Texas, and it's still who's gonna come down on the right side of that issue. And of course, it does change the fact that now it's up for a plaintiff to either come up with the money, or an organization like the ACLU to devote its resources to challenging this thing. It's now the burden's going to be on them to prove that it's discriminatory, rather than the state having to prove that it was not, to the satisfaction of the Justice Department. So, but there's still tools out there for people to use, and we'll see. We still don't know whether there's going to be voter ID in Pennsylvania or not.
Poor Vic Walczak. He has so much work to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, without doubt.
It's just amazing. A letter or two. First of all, the New York Times immediately says what the thing that we've been sort of laughing about, but it's not, about the Roberts Court's intellectual dishonesty. I mean, they flagged that. They said that the UVA Voting Rights Act was just a intellectually dishonest.
Yeah.
As was, today's dissent. Amazing. What? People are sending me stuff and I should check it out?
I don't know. I'm waiting for you to do something.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm doing too much at once.
Yes,
I'm trying to
multitask,
read,
yeah.
and I'm not doing well. Hey, Joseph, Joseph writes, I'm so happy to have experienced this momentous day with you and Chris. 32 years with my partner, and still going strong. That's wonderful.
Excellent. Great. Congratulations.
Yep.
It's terrific.
Okay, so here... John Hanger hails in the DOMA.
Go. Good. Everybody's
so
in on that.
Not surprised about that. Henry writes, I never listened to Rush Limbaugh, but today it just might be fun to hear him. I couldn't bear listening to that.
Oh, I don't know.
I
don't know. It might be fun. For the same reason, I'm going to read Scalia's dissent over a beer tonight.
Letter to the editor. Letter to the editor. This is a good one. And this is about the ruling on Tuesday. Listen to this. Here's again, intellectual dissent. The 15th Amendment forbids the denial or abridgment of the right to vote by any state or the United States on account of race and color.
Right.
And it gives to Congress the exclusive right to enforce the amendment by appropriate legislation. Congress decides what is appropriate, not the courts. Congress has reauthorized the act every time it came up for renewal. Only if there is a showing that a provision or execution conflicts with the Constitution can the court act. Otherwise, it must defer to Congress's judgment. That the 5 justices who voted to strike part of the law questioned its necessity, which is a policy judgment,
right?
Not a judicial judgment. They decided it isn't needed anymore. That's not constitutional. Right. It shows how contemptuous they are for the law when it conflicts with their conservative principles. That guy's got it dead on.
I mean, I think you can. I think there are certainly cases where the court says this thing that you're doing is not rationally attached to any kind of. I mean, laws do have to pass sort of a strict scrutiny in many cases, where you have to kind of say like this law as stated is rationally tied to this goal or whatever. But usually what a court does in that situation is it applies a standard of review to a body of evidence, usually the exhibits, the testimony given at the time the law was passed or whatever. Well, this thing was re-upped in 2006. There was witnesses. There was all kinds of discussion about what Congress was doing and why. And it's not clear to me, having read that ruling, that Roberts wanted to review any of that stuff or deal with it on its own terms. He kind of creates, from what I could tell, out of thin cloth, this idea of the equal sovereignty of the states, which is all states. If you as the federal government are going to do something that affects state liberties, you have to affect all states equally, which is I'm not aware of that ever having been a concept in constitutional law. And it honestly doesn't make much sense. Why should all states be treated different or the same if they act differently?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's just it's a kind of a crazy outcome. And so you can argue, and I think we have argued here today a little bit, that maybe it doesn't make so much sense to hold Texas to a different standard than Pennsylvania if they're both doing the same idiotic thing. I mean, if voter ID is bad in Texas, is the same voter ID bad in Pennsylvania? Yes. So one could argue. And
the same draconian abortion laws. It happens here, and we don't even raise a peep.
Right. So I guess the point would be that Roberts would say, well, that proves how crazy this law is and why we need a new standard of review. And in some ways, I think we agree with that. I mean, but the question here is, look, there are a lot of things that Congress does that, we don't necessarily think make a lot of sense. That doesn't necessarily mean that the court feels obliged to go in and just throw the legislators out of the job of legislating, which is what they did yesterday. And then to have the court the next day say, hey, to have Scalia say, hey, it's not our job to substitute our judgments from that of the people, when you've got the Senate voting unanimously half a decade ago to re-up this thing. I mean, it really does show you just how situational the ethics are. This is what a legal scholar would call it, an outcomes-based ruling here, where they're just making stuff up to get the ruling they want, and they're using whatever legal strategy comes to hand.
I can't believe that the people who write about law and the court and constitutional law aren't going to eviscerate this court for these.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even intellectually honest conservative jurists.
Yeah. How can you
put Scalia's
the Tuesday Scalia against the Wednesday Scalia? Yeah. It's not the same guy.
No.
Yeah. So if you like one, you have to hate the other. But you can hate both.
Unbelievable. So much going on. And in your absence, we never got to talk about Snowden, NSA.
Oh,
We're
next
out
week.
of time. Now it's become, I think in some ways it's becoming sort of like a funny movie. I mean, now that wasn't there a movie?
It is a movie where a guy, like Tom Hanks, is stuck in an airport. I was thinking about that this morning.
That's exactly the movie now.
Yeah.
He's stuck in an airport.
Because his country ceases to exist because of a coup d'etat when he's en route, flying over the ocean.
Right.
So they can't take him, but they can't send him back.
Yeah, because he's in no man's land right now.
Well, next week, I'm sure.
I will be here next week.
I'm sure we will not have resolved the issue of the federal government's intrusions into our privacy and what that means for us between now and next Wednesday.
Oh, God almighty.
What a day. What a morning. Come on. It's exciting. This is big.
It is.
This is big. People we know and love.
Absolutely.
People we know and love are now going to get benefits they have been long unfairly denied.
Day, June 26, 2013. A great day for progress, social progress in the United States of America. And I raise my Diet Coke to all of my gay friends, brothers, and sisters. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
See you next week.
Okay. And as I said, 4-day weekend for me, 4-day weekend for you.
Not for me, but I'm actually off tomorrow. So yeah.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, just tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be way off because I'm having a procedure in which I have to be sedated. So
tomorrow's show.
Goodbye. You think you're so neat.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.